I raised a child nobody wanted for 17 years, and then her billionaire mother looked me in the eyes and said, "You had your time with her. Now I'm taking my daughter back." I still remember the sound of those words because they were quieter than anger, but they hurt deeper than anything I had ever heard. My name is Evelyn Harper, and for most of my life, I believed love was something you proved through your actions, not something you claimed with words. I was 68 years old when that moment happened, but my story with Lily began when I was 51. Back then, I was living in a small white house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. My husband had passed away several years earlier, and the rooms that once felt full of conversation had become painfully silent. I had learned how to live alone, but I never expected that one ordinary afternoon would bring a little girl into my life and completely change my understanding of family. Lily was only a baby when she came into my care. She had no memory of the woman who gave birth to her, no understanding of why she was not growing up in the home she was supposed to know. All she knew was that someone needed to hold her, protect her, and tell her that she mattered. I never thought of her as someone I was simply looking after. From the first day I held her, I felt something I could never fully explain. She was my daughter in every way that mattered. I learned how to braid her hair before school. I stayed awake during long nights when she had a fever. I saved money for her piano lessons, even when I had to delay buying things for myself. When she got her first bicycle, I ran beside her down our street until she finally balanced on her own. When she graduated high school, I sat in the front row with tears in my eyes, feeling like the proudest mother in the world. Lily grew into a kind, thoughtful young woman. She had my husband's old books stacked beside her bed, my handwritten recipes saved in a little box, and countless memories inside the walls of the home we shared. She knew the truth about her past, but we rarely spoke about the woman who had left her behind. I never wanted Lily to carry anger in her heart. I told her that people sometimes make choices they later regret, but that her worth was never defined by someone else's absence. For 17 years, I believed we had built something stronger than circumstances. Then one morning, everything changed. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee when a black luxury SUV pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as a woman stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored coat and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who was used to getting whatever she wanted. I recognized her immediately from the old documents I had kept safely stored away. Victoria Whitmore, Lily's biological mother, the woman who had disappeared from her life 17 years earlier. I opened the door, expecting maybe an apology, maybe an explanation, maybe a moment where two mothers could acknowledge the complicated history between them. Instead, Victoria looked past me and into the house where Lily had grown up. Her eyes moved across the family photographs on the wall, the graduation pictures, the memories that filled every corner. Then she turned back to me and calmly said, "I am her mother. You were only the person who cared for her until I was ready." I felt my hand tighten around the door handle. Not because I wanted to fight with her, not because I wanted to prove anything, but because in that moment, I realized she had spent 17 years away and still did not understand what those years meant. She did not see the scraped knees, the late nights, the birthday candles, or the quiet sacrifices that never appeared in photographs. She only saw what money could fix. Victoria reached into her designer handbag and placed a folder on my table. Inside was an offer that showed exactly how differently we viewed love. She believed everything had a price, but she had forgotten one important thing. A family is not built in a single moment. It is built in thousands of moments when someone chooses to stay. After Victoria left my kitchen that afternoon, I sat at the same table where Lily had done her homework, where we had shared countless breakfasts, and where I had celebrated every small victory in her life. The folder she left behind remained untouched in front of me. I did not open it right away because I already knew what it represented. To Victoria, it was a solution. To me, it was a reminder that someone could spend 17 years away and still believe they could return with enough money to rewrite history. I looked around my home and noticed the little things I had stopped seeing because they had become part of my everyday life. The small marks on the wall where Lily had measured her height every birthday. The old bookshelf filled with the novels she loved as a teenager. The framed picture from her high school graduation where she stood beside me with the biggest smile on her face. Those memories were not stored in a bank account. They were not written on a legal document. They were simply the moments that built a family. When Lily came home that evening, she immediately noticed something was different. She placed her bag near the door and looked at me carefully. "Mom, what happened?" she asked. I tried to smile, but she knew me too well. After 17 years together, she could read the smallest changes in my expression. I told her that her biological mother had visited. The room became quiet. Lily slowly sat down across from me, and I watched a mixture of emotions cross her face. Curiosity, confusion, and something deeper that she tried to hide. "She wants me to go with her, doesn't she?" Lily asked softly. I nodded. I did not want to make Victoria the villain in Lily's eyes. I did not want my daughter to feel like she had to choose between two people. But I also could not pretend that those missing years did not matter. "She said she can give you things I could never give you," I told her. Lily looked down at the table. "Like what?" she asked. I thought about Victoria's expensive car parked outside, the designer clothes, the confidence of someone who had built a billion-dollar company. "A different life," I answered. Lily was silent for a long time. Then she said something I never forgot. "Mom, I do not know if she understands that I already have a life." Those words stayed with me, because that was the part Victoria did not understand. She saw Lily as something she had lost and wanted back. She saw a daughter as a piece of her past that she could reclaim. But Lily was not an object waiting on a shelf. She was a person who had grown, changed, and created her own memories. Later that night, after Lily went to her room, I finally opened the folder. Inside were documents about a private apartment in New York, a university opportunity, and financial support that was more than I had ever imagined. Victoria had built a complete plan. She had thought of everything. Everything except the one thing that mattered most. She had not thought about what Lily needed emotionally. She had not asked about her favorite memories. She had not asked about the years she missed. She had not asked what it felt like to grow up wondering why your mother was not there. I closed the folder and placed it back on the table. For the first time in many years, I felt something I had not expected. Not anger, not fear, just sadness. Because I realized Victoria was not only trying to take Lily away from me, she was also missing the chance to truly know the daughter she had left behind. The next morning, I found Lily sitting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me and looked toward the quiet street where she had learned to ride her bicycle, where she had walked to school, and where she had grown from a little girl into a young woman. "I need to understand why she left," Lily said. I held her hand gently and nodded. "You deserve the truth," I told her. And for the first time, I realized that our story was no longer only about the woman who raised her. It was also about the daughter who deserved to know why someone walked away, and whether love could ever be measured by anything other than the years someone chose to stay. The days after Victoria's visit felt different inside my home. Nothing had physically changed. The same flowers sat on the kitchen windowsill. The same wooden clock my husband had repaired years ago still ticked softly above the doorway. The same morning sunlight came through the curtains and covered the floor in a warm golden glow. But somehow, everything felt heavier. It was as if the past 17 years had suddenly been placed on a scale, and I was being asked to prove that all those quiet moments had mattered. Lily spent the next few days trying to understand the woman who had given birth to her. I watched her search through old memories, looking for answers to questions she had carried silently for years. She never asked me why I stayed. She never questioned my love for her. But I could see the uncertainty in her eyes when she wondered why someone who brought her into this world could also walk away from it. One evening, Lily and I sat together in the living room, the same room where we used to watch holiday movies when she was a child. She held an old photograph in her hands. It was a picture from her first day of school. She was wearing a pink sweater, holding a backpack almost as big as she was, and smiling like the entire world was waiting for her. "Do you remember this day?" she asked. I smiled. "Of course I do. You were so nervous that morning." Lily looked at the picture for a long moment. "I do not remember being nervous. I remember you telling me everything would be okay." That simple sentence reminded me of something important. Children do not measure love by expensive gifts or impressive promises. They remember who sat beside them when they were scared. They remember who showed up. A week after Victoria first arrived, she invited Lily to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. Lily asked me if I was comfortable with it. I told her the truth. "I am not afraid of you learning about your past," I said. "You deserve to know where you came from. I only hope you remember where you were loved." When Lily returned that afternoon, she looked thoughtful. She was not angry. She was not excited. She simply looked like someone trying to understand 2 completely different worlds. Victoria had told her about opportunities she could provide. A luxury apartment in Manhattan. Travel experiences. Connections that could open doors most people only dreamed about. I understood why those things sounded appealing. Anyone would be impressed by that kind of life. But I also knew something Victoria did not. A comfortable life and a loved life were not always the same thing. She wants me to move in with her, Lily finally said. I took a slow breath. What do you want? I asked. Lily looked surprised by my question. You are not going to tell me what to do? She asked. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. I spent 17 years teaching you how to stand on your own. I cannot ask you to choose me just because I raised you. That night, after Lily went to sleep, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea. I thought about the first time I held her. I thought about every birthday cake, every school event, every conversation before bed. I realized something that gave me peace. Real love does not hold someone tightly because it is afraid of losing them. Real love gives someone the freedom to choose. The next morning, Victoria called. Her voice was polite, but there was a confidence underneath it that I recognized. She wanted to meet with me again. This time, she said she wanted to discuss what was best for Lily. I agreed. Not because I wanted to fight, not because I wanted to defend my place, but because after 17 years of silence, there were still questions that needed answers. I knew that meeting would reveal more than just Victoria's plans. It would reveal whether she truly wanted to know the daughter she left behind, or whether she only wanted to reclaim the life she missed. I looked out at the quiet street where Lily had grown up, and I reminded myself of something I had learned over the years. Some people believe family is about who has the strongest claim, but I believed family was about who had the strongest commitment. Victoria arrived the next afternoon exactly on time. That alone told me something about her. She was a woman who had built her entire life around schedules, meetings, and carefully planned decisions. Even her arrival felt organized, as if this conversation was another business discussion she needed to complete. I invited her inside and offered her coffee, the same way I would have welcomed any guest who entered my home. She looked around the living room again, studying the photographs on the walls. There was a picture of Lily at 10 years old holding a science fair ribbon. Another showed her at 16, smiling beside the old oak tree in our backyard. Victoria looked at those moments, but I wondered if she truly understood them. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table where I had spent years preparing meals for Lily. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Victoria placed her hands together and looked directly at me. Evelyn, I want you to understand something. I am not here to hurt you. I nodded slowly. I hope that is true. She took a breath. I know you have cared for her. I know you have given her a good life. But I am her biological mother. There are things I can provide that you simply cannot. Her words were calm, almost gentle, but they carried a message I had heard before. She believed love could be compared. She believed motherhood was something that could be measured by resources, opportunities, and status. What do you think Lily needs right now? I asked. Victoria answered without hesitation. A future. A world beyond this small town. Access to better schools, better connections, better experiences. I can open doors for her. I looked out the window toward the backyard where Lily used to play as a child. I remembered the summer evenings when we planted flowers together. I remembered helping her prepare for exams at the kitchen table. I remembered driving 30 minutes to a small music store because she wanted to learn an instrument and I wanted her to follow her interests. Those moments did not open doors in the way Victoria described. They opened something else. They built trust. You are right about one thing, I said quietly. There are things you can give Lily that I cannot. Victoria looked surprised. I appreciate you recognizing that. I looked back at her. You can give her expensive opportunities. You can introduce her to powerful people. You can show her a lifestyle I never had. But there is one thing I do not understand. She waited. Why did you not give her your time when she needed it most? The room became silent. For the first time since she arrived, Victoria looked away. It was only for a moment, but I saw something behind her confidence. Regret. I made mistakes, she finally said. I was young. I was trying to build my company. I thought I would have time to fix things later. I listened carefully, because I knew mistakes were part of being human. I had made my own mistakes. But some choices create empty spaces that cannot simply be filled years later. Lily did not need perfection, I told her. She needed someone who would show up. Victoria lowered her eyes. I know. That was the first honest thing she had said to me. Not an argument. Not an explanation. Just 2 words carrying the weight of 17 years. Before she left, she placed another document on the table. It was not a check this time. It was a proposal for Lily's future, filled with plans, opportunities, and promises. I did not touch it. After the door closed behind her, I sat there quietly. I did not feel victorious. This was not a competition between two mothers. It was a reminder of something much deeper. A child can have many people who care about her, but the people who shape her heart are usually the ones who are there during the ordinary moments. That evening, Lily came home and found me sitting in the same chair. She looked at my face and immediately knew the conversation had been difficult. "What did she say?" Lily asked. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I had once held in my arms, and the young woman standing before me now. "She loves you in the way she knows how," I said. But love is not only about what someone wants to give you. It is also about what they were willing to sacrifice when you needed them. Lily sat beside me quietly, and in that silence, I realized the hardest part of this journey was not losing my place in Lily's life. It was watching her discover that the person who gave her life was not always the person who knew how to protect her heart. After Victoria left that afternoon, I expected to feel angry. I expected to feel afraid that everything I had built with Lily for 17 years could disappear in a single moment. But instead, I felt something quieter. I felt the weight of a question that had been sitting in my heart since the day Victoria arrived. Could love survive when someone tried to replace memories with promises? The answer was not something I could decide. It belonged to Lily. That was the hardest part for me to accept. For 17 years, I had protected her, guided her, and helped her become the young woman she was. But loving someone also meant trusting them enough to make their own choices. A few days later, Lily asked if we could go for a drive. We did not have a destination. We simply followed the familiar roads outside our small Ohio town. The same roads where I had driven her to school, to appointments, and to every place where she needed me. As we passed the old community center, Lily looked out the window and smiled. "I remember when you brought me here for my first dance class," she said. I laughed softly. "You were so nervous that you almost refused to walk inside." "I know," she replied. "But you sat outside the whole time because you said you wanted me to know you were there if I needed you." That memory stayed with me. It was such a small thing. A simple afternoon years ago. But those were the moments that shaped our relationship. Not the big celebrations. Not the expensive gifts. The quiet promises that someone would always be there. When we returned home, Lily found an envelope on the kitchen counter. It was from Victoria. Inside was a letter and a collection of photographs from the years before Lily came into my care. I watched as Lily slowly looked through them. For the first time, she saw pieces of a past she had never known. There were pictures of Victoria when she was younger. There were hospital records from the time Lily was born. There were notes about decisions that had been made during those difficult years. Lily did not speak for a long time. I sat beside her, but I did not interrupt. Some truths need space before they can be understood. Finally, she looked at me. "Why did you never show me these?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Because I did not want you to grow up believing your story was only about someone leaving you." Lily looked down at the photographs. "Were you ever angry at her?" she asked. I thought about the question carefully. "I was hurt," I admitted. "But I did not want my pain to become your burden." She reached for my hand. "You always protected me." I smiled gently. That is what mothers do. The next day, Lily met with Victoria again. This time I stayed home. I did not ask what they would discuss. I did not ask what Victoria would offer her. I trusted Lily to find her own answers. While waiting, I worked in the garden behind the house. I planted flowers near the fence where Lily used to play when she was little. Gardening had always helped me think. There was something peaceful about caring for something slowly and patiently. You could not rush a seed into becoming a flower. You could only provide the right conditions and allow time to do its work. That afternoon, Lily returned home. She walked into the garden and stood beside me. I immediately noticed something different in her expression. She looked calmer, more certain. "I talked to her," Lily said. I placed my gardening gloves on the table. "How do you feel?" Lily looked around the backyard that had been part of her childhood. "Confused," she admitted. "But I understand something now. I cannot change what happened when I was little. I cannot make those years come back. But I can decide what kind of relationships I want in my life now." I nodded. Those words were not a victory for me. They were not a loss for Victoria. They were simply the beginning of Lily understanding that family was not only about where you came from. It was about the people who showed up and stayed. And for the first time since Victoria returned, I felt a little less afraid of what the future might bring. When Lily came home that afternoon, I could tell something important had happened before she even said a word. She did not walk through the door like someone who had made a decision. She walked in like someone who had finally understood something about her own life. She placed her keys on the kitchen counter, sat down at the table, and looked at the old wooden surface where we had shared so many conversations over the years. She told me everything, Lily said quietly. I sat across from her and waited. I knew this moment was not about me. It was about the truth she deserved to hear. Victoria had finally explained what happened 17 years earlier. She had not been struggling. Financially, she had not lost the ability to care for her child. She had made a choice. At the time, Victoria was building her company and believed that stepping away temporarily would allow her to return later when she had created a better life. She convinced herself that providing wealth in the future could make up for the time she missed. But time does not wait for anyone. Children grow. First steps become memories. School days become stories. Small moments disappear forever. Lily told me that Victoria cried while explaining her regrets. She admitted that she thought she could return whenever she was ready and everything would somehow fall back into place. But life had moved forward without her. Lily was no longer the little girl she remembered. She was a young woman with her own dreams, feelings, and memories. I listened carefully as Lily spoke because I understood something that was difficult for both of us. Victoria was not a stranger. She was still Lily's biological mother. That connection would always exist. But being connected by blood and being connected through love were two different things. Did she say she was sorry? I asked. Lily nodded slowly. Yes, but she also kept explaining why she did what she did. I understood what Lily meant. Sometimes an apology becomes harder to accept when it is surrounded by reasons. A person can regret a decision and still struggle to fully understand the damage that decision caused. That evening, Lily and I sat on the porch as the sun went down behind the trees. The neighborhood was quiet. A few children were riding bicycles nearby, and I watched them with a familiar feeling in my heart. I remembered when Lily was that age. I remembered holding the back of her bicycle seat as she learned to balance. I remembered letting go before she realized I had done it, because I wanted her to discover that she was stronger than she believed. Maybe that was what motherhood had always been about. Loving someone enough to support them, but also trusting them enough to let them choose their own path. The following week, Victoria contacted me again. This time, her voice sounded different. Less certain. Less like a business conversation. She asked if she could come by and talk. I agreed. When she arrived, she did not bring a folder. She did not bring documents or offers. She simply sat across from me with nothing but her own words. I thought money could fix what I lost, she said. I thought if I gave Lily everything she could ever want, she would understand why I was gone. I looked at her quietly. But she did not need everything, I replied. She needed you. Victoria lowered her eyes. For the first time, I saw the person behind the success and confidence. I saw a woman who had spent years chasing achievements while carrying the regret of what she had missed. That did not erase the past. It did not change the years Lily and I shared. But it was the first time I felt that Victoria was finally seeing the truth. A family is not created by claiming a place in someone's life. It is created by earning that place every day. After that conversation with Victoria, I expected to feel relieved. For so long, I had wondered if she would ever understand what those missing years meant. I wondered if she would ever see that a child's heart is not something you can return to after years away and expect everything to be exactly the same. But as I watched her walk away from my front porch that day, I realized something had changed. Not because the past had been repaired. It had not. 17 years could not be rewritten. But for the first time, Victoria was no longer looking at Lily as something she had lost. She was beginning to see her as a person with her own memories, her own feelings, and her own choices. Over the next few weeks, things between the three of us became more complicated. There were no dramatic arguments. No angry confrontations, just difficult conversations that needed to happen. Victoria started showing up differently. She called Lily not to make plans or offer opportunities, but simply to ask how her day was going. At first, Lily was cautious. She had spent her whole life learning not to expect too much from someone who was not there. Trust was not something that could appear overnight. It had to be rebuilt slowly, through consistent actions. I understood that. Better than anyone. I had spent 17 years earning Lily's trust one ordinary day at a time. One breakfast, one school pickup, one conversation before bed, one promise kept. That was how relationships were built, not through grand gestures, but through thousands of small moments. One Saturday morning, Lily asked if I would join her and Victoria for lunch. I was surprised. I had expected Lily to keep those relationships separate for a while, but she looked at me and said, "I think we all need to learn how to move forward." We met at a quiet restaurant near the town square. I arrived early, as I always did, and watched people passing by the windows. Families laughing together, friends sharing meals. Ordinary moments that often mean more than people realize. When Victoria arrived, she looked nervous. It was the first time I had ever seen her unsure of herself. The woman who once walked into my home believing money could solve everything was now sitting across from me searching for the right words. During lunch, Victoria reached into her bag and placed a small envelope on the table. I looked at it but did not touch it. "It is not money," she said quickly. "I know that is what I always offered before. I know I thought that was enough." She opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. It was written for Lily. In the letter, Victoria described the years she missed and the regrets she carried. She did not try to excuse every choice. She did not ask Lily to forget the past. She simply acknowledged that she had missed moments she could never get back. Lily read the letter quietly. I watched her expression change as she reached the final lines. There were no easy answers. There was no magical moment where everything suddenly became perfect. Real life does not work that way. Healing takes time. But there was something different in the room. There was honesty. And sometimes honesty is the first step toward rebuilding something that was broken. After lunch, Lily hugged Victoria. It was not the hug of a little girl finally getting the mother she always wanted. It was the hug of a young woman accepting a complicated truth. Victoria had missed years that mattered, but she was finally choosing to be present for the years ahead. On the drive home, Lily looked out the window quietly. Then she said something I will never forget. "Mom, I used to think family was about choosing one person and leaving another behind. But now I think family can be more complicated than that." I reached over and held her hand. She was right. Love was not always simple. Sometimes people fail us. Sometimes they return carrying regrets. Sometimes the people who raise us and the people who gave us life are not the same person. But the most important thing is not where someone starts in your story. It is what they choose to do from that moment forward. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. After everything that had happened, I thought there would be a moment when everything felt settled. I thought there would be a clear ending where everyone understood their place and the pain of the past finally disappeared. But life rarely gives us answers that simple. Healing was not a single conversation. It was not one apology or one emotional moment. It was a collection of small choices made every day. For Lily, those choices meant learning how to build a relationship with someone who had once been absent from her life. For Victoria, it meant understanding that being a mother was not about having a title. It was about showing up when someone needed you. And for me, it meant accepting that the love I had given Lily did not become smaller just because another person finally decided to be present. One morning, Lily came into my kitchen carrying a small box. She placed it on the table and smiled. "I found something you might like." Inside were old drawings, school projects, and little notes she had written when she was younger. Things I had saved over the years without even realizing how much they meant. There was a picture she had drawn in elementary school of our house. Above the drawing, she had written, "My safe place." I held that paper in my hands for a long time. It was just a child's drawing, a simple piece of paper with colorful lines. But to me, it represented everything I had hoped to give her. Not a perfect life. Not a life without challenges. Just a place where she always knew she belonged. Later that day, Victoria visited again. This time, she did not come with plans or promises. She came with a question. "Can I see some of the memories you have from when she was little?" she asked. I looked at her carefully. A few months earlier, I might have thought she was trying to understand what she had missed so she could compete with it. But something had changed. She was not trying to replace those years anymore. She was trying to understand them. I brought out the albums from the closet. We sat together at the kitchen table and turned each page slowly. There were pictures of Lily learning to ride a bike, pictures from school plays, pictures from holidays where our family was small but full of love. Victoria became quiet as she looked through them. "I missed so much," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, you did." It was not easy to say those words. But honesty was necessary. Pretending the past did not happen would not help anyone move forward. Victoria touched one of the photographs gently. I thought I could come back and give her everything she deserved. I looked at her. She did deserve everything. But what she needed first was someone who was there. She nodded slowly. There was no argument this time. No explanation. Just acceptance. That evening, Lily called me from her bedroom. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. I sat beside her on the bed, just like I had done when she was a child. She told me she had been thinking about what family meant. She said she used to believe she had to choose between the woman who gave birth to her and the woman who raised her. But now she understood that her heart had room for complicated truths. "You are my mother," she said. "That will never change." I smiled, but I also wanted her to know something important. "Lily, I never raised you because I wanted to own your love. I raised you because I loved you." Those words mattered. Because real love does not demand proof. It does not keep score. It does not disappear when someone finds another person to care about. It simply remains. A few days later, I watched Lily and Victoria sitting together in the backyard, talking about things I could not hear. For years, I had feared that moment. I thought someone taking a place beside Lily meant there would be less room for me. But as I looked at them, I realized something I had forgotten. Love is not a limited amount that disappears when shared. Sometimes, when people choose kindness and honesty, love grows bigger. And after 17 years of believing I had to protect the daughter I raised, I finally understood that the greatest gift I could give her was the freedom to build every relationship that brought peace into her life. Months passed after that first afternoon when Victoria walked into my home and changed everything I thought I knew about family. When I looked back on those days, I realized the hardest part was never losing my place in Lily's life. The hardest part was accepting that love could exist in more than one form. For 17 years, I had been the person who packed her lunches, helped with homework, listened to her dreams, and reminded her that she was capable of anything. I had always known that day would come when she would build a life beyond our little home in Ohio. I just never expected another mother to arrive and make me question whether all those years would still matter. But standing in my kitchen months later, watching Lily laugh with Victoria in the backyard, I understood something I had not understood before. The love I gave Lily was never valuable because I was the only person who loved her. It was valuable because it was real. One Sunday afternoon, Lily invited both of us to her graduation celebration from her new program. She had worked hard, and seeing her surrounded by people who cared about her filled my heart with pride. I watched Victoria arrive carrying a small gift, nothing extravagant, nothing designed to impress anyone. It was simply thoughtful. For the first time, I saw her trying to connect with Lily instead of trying to prove something. She walked over to me before joining the others. "Thank you," she said. I looked at her carefully. "For what?" She smiled sadly. "For loving her when I was not there." Those words were not enough to erase the past. They could not return the birthdays she missed or the ordinary mornings she never experienced. But they showed me that she finally understood something important. Love is not measured by how much someone wants to be forgiven. It is measured by whether they are willing to change. Later that evening, Lily and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset behind the trees. The neighborhood was quiet, just like it had been on so many evenings throughout her childhood. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" she asked me. I knew exactly what she meant. I thought about the years before Victoria returned. I thought about how simple life had been when it was just the two of us. But I also thought about the person Lily had become. Strong, compassionate, understanding. "Of course," I said. "Everyone has moments they wish they could change. But wishing does not create a better future. The choices we make now do." Lily leaned against my shoulder like she used to when she was younger. "You know you will always be my mom, right?" she whispered. I smiled. "I know. But I also know you have room in your heart for other people too." That was the truth I had learned through everything we experienced. A mother is not only the person who gives life. A mother is the person who gives love when there is nothing to gain. She is the person who stays through ordinary days that no one else sees. She is the person who believes in you before you believe in yourself. I still keep the old photographs from Lily's childhood in the same wooden box where I have always stored them. I still walk through the garden where she used to play. I still remember every small moment that shaped the two of us. But now, when I look at those memories, I do not see them as something I have to protect from being taken away. They belong to both of us forever. Victoria did not replace me. She could not. And I did not need to replace her. We were two different people who loved the same young woman in different ways. The little girl I once held in my arms grew into a woman who taught me one final lesson. Family is not always about who arrived first. It is about who chooses to stay, who chooses to grow, and who chooses to love even when life becomes complicated. And after all those years, I finally understood that the greatest proof of love was never holding on. It was knowing that the bond we built was strong enough to let Lily become exactly who she was meant to be.